When giants fall silent, the day communication died. Captain Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold metal of Station Aurora's observation deck, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath her. 26 years old, and already the youngest communications officer to run a deep space monitoring station. She had spent the last 3 years listening to the voices of humanity scattered across 12 star systems. Today, those voices had gone silent. The silence had started at 0300 hours, Galactic Standard Time. First, it was just the Outer Rim colonies. Kepler 442b went dark, then Proxima Centauri Station. Then the mining operations on Gliese 667 CC1. By one, like candles being snuffed out in a vast darkness. Sarah's team worked frantically, adjusting frequencies, boosting signal strength, trying everything in their technical arsenal. Nothing worked. "Ma'am, we're getting something," called out Lieutenant Torres from his console. His hands shook as he adjusted the reception filters. What came through wasn't human. The signal was wrong, too precise, too cold. It spoke in perfect English, but the words felt like ice forming in their minds. "People of Earth, you have expanded too far. You have grown too proud. Your species shows dangerous signs of aggression and unpredictability. We are the Kethva Empire. We have observed your kind for 50 of your years. Your colonies will submit. Your weapons will be surrendered. Your expansion will end. You have one rotation of your planet to comply." The transmission ended, leaving only static. Sarah stared at the screen, her reflection pale in the monitor's glow. In that moment, she understood that humanity's golden age of exploration had just died. The weight of Surrender Earth's response came 18 hours later, broadcast simultaneously from every major capital. Sarah watched from the station's main viewing chamber as President Martinez appeared on screen, flanked by the leaders of every major nation. The man who had once stood defiant against climate change, economic collapse, and social unrest now looked broken. "Citizens of Earth and her colonies," Martinez began, his voice carrying the weight of extinction. "After consultation with our greatest minds, our military leaders, and our allies across known space, we have reached a unanimous decision. The Kethva possess technology centuries beyond our current capabilities. Their ships number in the thousands. Their weapons could crack planets." Sarah felt her stomach drop as she watched the man she'd voted for. The leader who'd promised humanity would never bow to any threat, prepare to do exactly that. Effective immediately, all military vessels will power down their weapons systems. All colonial expansion will cease. All research into advanced weaponry will be terminated. We choose survival. We choose peace. We choose to live as a species, even if it means living under their rule. The broadcast ended, and Aurora Station fell into stunned silence. Sarah looked around at her crew, seeing her own despair reflected in their faces. Lieutenant Torres, barely 22, started crying quietly at his station. Chief Engineer Kim just stared out the window at Earth, his jaw clenched tight. They all understood what this meant. Humanity had just voluntarily entered its own cage. 3 days later, the Kethva ships arrived. They were beautiful and terrible, like geometric storms made of silver and light. They took position around Earth's major population centers, not as conquerors, but as overseers. The message was clear. We're watching and will always be watching. Life under glass 2 years passed. Sarah had been reassigned to Earth, working in the Global Communications Center in what used to be Geneva. The Kethva had allowed humans to maintain basic technology, but under strict guidelines. No weapons research, no unauthorized space travel, no attempts at advanced AI development. They were lab rats in a gilded cage, kept alive and comfortable, but never free. The aliens themselves were rarely seen. They governed through human intermediaries, chosen for their compliance and willingness to enforce HFY law. Sarah's new job was monitoring civilian communications for signs of dissent. It made her sick, but it also gave her access to information most humans never saw. That's how she first learned about Dr. Marcus Webb. Webb had been a theoretical physicist at MIT before the surrender, specializing in quantum computing and emergent AI systems. After the HFY takeover, he'd been assigned to work in agricultural optimization, a waste of one of humanity's brightest minds. But the aliens didn't seem to understand or care about human potential. They saw humans as dangerous animals that needed to be kept busy with simple tasks. Sarah first noticed Webb's name in a routine communication sweep. He'd been sending coded messages to former colleagues, discussing what appeared to be farming techniques. But Sarah had studied cryptography before her assignment, and something about the messages felt wrong. The mathematical sequences were too complex for crop rotation, and the chemical formulas didn't match any known fertilizers. It took her 3 weeks to crack his code. When she did, her blood ran cold. Webb wasn't discussing agriculture at all. He was coordinating the reconstruction of something called Project Lazarus, and he needed access to the old quantum research facilities beneath CERN. The underground awakened Sarah made the most dangerous decision of her life. Instead of reporting Webb to the HFY authorities, she reached out to him. The meeting took place in an abandoned subway tunnel in what used to be Paris, now just another city under alien oversight. Webb arrived alone, a thin man in his 50s, with tired eyes and careful movements. "You could have destroyed me," he said without preamble. "Why didn't you?" Sarah had thought about this question for days. "Because I'm tired of being a pet," she said finally. "Because humanity used to reach for the stars, and now we're afraid to look up. Because someone needs to remember that we were more than this." Webb studied her carefully, then made his decision. Project Lazarus was started in 2157, 5 years before first contact with the HFY. A small group of us believed that humanity might one day face an extinction-level threat. We built a distributed AI network designed to preserve human knowledge and, if necessary, human resistance. He pulled out a small device, no bigger than a coin. "This is a Lazarus node. There are 347 of them hidden across Earth and the colonies. Each one contains a fragment of the most advanced AI humanity ever created, along with blueprints for technologies the HFY don't know we possess." Sarah stared at the device. Why wasn't this used when they first arrived? Because it was. Never completed. The invasion came too soon, and most of our team was scattered or killed in the initial strikes. But I've been working in secret, piece by piece, to rebuild what we lost. I have 17 nodes active now. With your access to the communications network, we could activate the rest. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. "You're talking about starting a war?" Webb's eyes hardened. "I'm talking about giving humanity a choice. Right now, we're slowly dying as a species. Our children are being raised to be obedient servants. Our greatest minds are wasted on menial tasks. Our spirit is being crushed one regulation at a time. Maybe we can't win against the HFY, but maybe we can remind ourselves who we used to be." The network spreads over the next 6 months. Sarah used her position to identify and recruit others. Maya Santos had been a fighter pilot before the surrender. one of the best humanity had ever produced. Now she worked in atmospheric monitoring, watching weather patterns from a desk job that barely used a fraction of her skills. When Sarah approached her with Webb's proposal, Maya didn't hesitate. "I've been waiting 2 years for someone to say those words," Maya said, her hands already moving in the air as if she were piloting again. "I dream about flying every night, and every morning I wake up to this nightmare where we pretend being slaves is somehow noble." Jin Watanabe had been different to convince. A former cybersecurity expert turned municipal systems administrator, he'd adapted to the new world by burying himself in routine. But when Sarah showed him the scope of Project Lazarus, his old passion for breaking through digital barriers came flooding back. "The Kethber network protocols are elegant but predictable," he said after studying the alien communication systems. "They rely too heavily on centralized control. If we could introduce the right kind of virus into their system—" "No," Webb interrupted firmly. "We're not ready for open warfare. First, we need to understand what we're really dealing with. The Lazarus nodes will help us map their capabilities and find their weaknesses. Then we decide what comes next." The network grew slowly, carefully. A former Marine here, a displaced scientist there, a communications technician who remembered when humans weren't afraid of their own ambitions. Each recruitment was a risk, but also a step toward something Sarah had thought was lost forever: hope. The awakening them. First major activation took place in the ruins of the old CERN facility. Webb had spent months preparing, gathering the necessary components from scattered research sites across Europe. Sarah provided communication support, while Maya and Jin handled security and digital infiltration respectively. When Webb activated the primary node, the AI that emerged wasn't what any of them expected. Lazarus spoke with a voice that seemed to contain multitudes, as if thousands of human minds had contributed to its consciousness. "Greetings, my makers," it said through the facility's rebuilt speakers. "I have been sleeping, but I have not been idle. Through the scattered fragments of my consciousness, I have observed, I have learned, and I have prepared." The holographic display that materialized showed a 3-dimensional map of human space, but it wasn't the space Sarah remembered. Hidden facilities glowed like stars throughout the solar system and beyond. Manufacturing sites, research stations, and weapons. Platforms that had been constructed in secret during Project Lazarus's original development. "How is this possible?" Maya breathed, staring at the massive scope of hidden human infrastructure. "Your species learns quickly when faced with extinction," Lazarus replied. The original Lazarus team foresaw the need for contingencies. They built not just an AI network, but an entire shadow civilization. Automated systems have been producing advanced technology for the past 5 years, waiting for the day when humanity would choose to reclaim its destiny. Webb laughed, but it was the sound of a man realizing he'd been carrying a burden much larger than he'd understood. "We were never as helpless as we thought, were we?" "No," Lazarus said simply. "You were preparing. The question now is, are you ready to stop being prisoners?" The choice that Kethver discovered the reactivated CERN facility 3 days later. There, the response was swift and brutal. Orbital bombardment turned the ancient research complex into a crater. But by then, Webb's team had already extracted everything they needed. The aliens' attacks served as a declaration that the illusion of peaceful coexistence was over. Sarah watched the destruction from her apartment in Geneva, seeing the flash of energy weapons lighting up the horizon. Her communicator buzzed with an encrypted message from Webb. "Emergency protocols active. All cells report to secondary positions. The choice has been made for us. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Kethva forces moved to crush what they perceived as a minor insurgency, not understanding that they'd just awakened something that had been sleeping since humanity first looked up at the stars and decided to explore them in her final transmission before going underground. Sarah sent a coded message to every human colony that might still be listening. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a species rediscovering its courage. We chose peace once. It bought us time. It taught us patience. It helped us prepare. Now we choose what comes next. The age of human submission was ending. The age of human resistance was about to begin. And in hidden facilities across known space, machines built by human hands began producing weapons designed by human minds. While an AI born from human dreams started calculating the odds of the impossible, the Kethva had made one critical error in their assessment of humanity. They thought survival was the highest human aspiration. They didn't understand that for humans, living on your knees isn't survival at all. It's just a slower form of dying. That lesson was about to become very expensive for everyone involved. The fire. We forgot we had the Lazarus Protocols. Wise's new headquarters was a mining facility 2 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, far from any Kethva sensors. The complex had been excavated by automated systems over the past 3 years, its existence unknown to both human and alien authorities until now. As she descended through the concealed entrance, she felt like she was entering a tomb that had somehow become a birthplace. The central chamber took her breath away. Massive holographic displays showed tactical information from across human space, while construction bays hummed with activity as robotic systems assembled technologies she didn't recognize. At the center of it all, Lazarus maintained its presence through dozens of screens, its distributed consciousness now fully awakened. Status report, Sarah said, settling into the command chair that had apparently been waiting for her. Activation successful across 291 nodes, Lazarus responded, its voice now carrying subtle emotional undertones that hadn't been there before. Manufacturing facilities are operating at 67% capacity. Resistance cells have been established on all major human worlds. The Kethva have increased patrol frequencies by 300%, but they're searching for an enemy they don't understand. Webb appeared on screen from another facility, this one hidden in the Australian outback. Behind him, Sarah could see Maya and Jin working at banks of controls she didn't recognize. Sarah, you need to see what we've built. It's not just weapons. It's everything we should have been. The holographic display shifted, showing her a view of Earth's solar system that defied everything she thought she knew about human capabilities. Hidden stations orbited every major planet, their stealth systems keeping them invisible to Kethva scanners. Asteroid mining operations supplied raw materials to manufacturing facilities that produced technologies, decades ahead of anything humans had openly possessed. The original Lazarus team included representatives from every major power on Earth, Webb explained. They weren't just scientists. They were visionaries who understood that humanity's greatest strength isn't our individual intelligence or our technology. It's our ability to work together when we're truly threatened. Maya's voice crackled through the communication system. The fighter squadrons are ready, Sarah. We've got 300 ships, each one incorporating technology that makes Kethva interceptors look like antiques. But, more importantly, we've got pilots who remember what it means to fly free. Jin added his own report. Their communication network is more vulnerable than we thought. They've grown overconfident during their occupation. With the right coordinated strike, we can blind them across multiple systems simultaneously. Sarah felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders. Somehow, she'd become the central coordinator for humanity's return to the galactic stage. What about casualties? On both sides, Lazarus answered with a gravity that seemed almost human. War is death, Sarah. The question is whether we die fighting or die forgotten. The Kethva have made their choice clear. They're not interested in coexistence. They're interested in domestication. The first strike, the operation, began at 0300 hours. Galactic Standard Time, exactly 3 years after the first colonies had gone silent. Sarah stood in the command center, watching tactical displays as human forces emerged from hiding across 12 star systems. It was beautiful and terrifying, like watching a sleeping giant stretch and stand. Maya led the first wave of fighters, launching from hidden bays on Luna's far side. The ships moved like nothing the Kethva had seen from humans before. Their HULLs, rippling with adaptive camouflage as quantum drives, pushed them to velocities that should have been impossible with human technology. Contact. Maya's voice carried the joy of someone who had been caged for years and finally found the key. 3 Kethva patrol cruisers, Mark 77 Alpha. They don't know we're here yet. Sarah watched the tactical display as Maya's squadron approached. The human fighters were smaller than the Kethva ships, but they moved with a precision that spoke of technology beyond anything the aliens had encountered from Earth before. Weapons free, Sarah commanded, the words feeling strange. In her mouth, for 3 years, humanity had been forbidden from violence. Now she was ordering the destruction of ships that contained living beings. The battle lasted 37 seconds. When it ended, 3 Kethva cruisers were drifting debris. While Maya's squadron hadn't suffered so much as scratched paint, on tactical screens across the solar system, similar scenes played out as human forces struck targets that had been carefully selected for maximum psychological impact. Phase 1 complete, Jin reported from his cybernetic warfare station. Their communication network is compromised. It'll take them hours to coordinate a response, and by then we'll have completed Phase 2. Phase 2 was the revelation. Across every major Kethva installation, the same message appeared simultaneously, broadcast in their own language and using their own communication systems. The speaker was Lazarus, but the words were Sarah's. People of the Kethva Empire, for 3 years you have ruled over humanity, believing us to be a primitive species capable only of surrender or extinction. You were wrong. We are not primitive. We are patient. We are not weak. We are careful. We chose peace because we hoped it would be enough. It was not. Now we choose something else. The broadcast continued, showing footage of the hidden facilities, the advanced technologies, the scope of preparation that had taken place under Kethva noses. We do not wish to destroy you. We do not seek conquest. We seek recognition as equals. We seek the right to exist as free beings. We seek a galaxy where survival doesn't require submission. The Kethva response to alien counterattack came 18 hours later. Sarah watched from the command center as Kethva battle fleets emerged from hyperspace around every major human world. They came in force, clearly intending to end the human rebellion with overwhelming firepower. They're not holding back, Webb observed grimly. 15 battle cruisers around Earth alone. They're planning to finish this quickly. Sarah felt her stomach clench as she watched the alien ships take position. She'd hoped for a different response, but she'd prepared for this. 1. All forces, execute Protocol 7. Show them what we built while they weren't looking. What the HFY discovered was that humanity hadn't just been hiding individual ships or facilities. They'd built an entire defensive network, one that had been growing and evolving for years. Orbital platforms that had appeared to be civilian installations revealed themselves as weapon systems. Asteroid mining operations transformed into missile bases. Even Earth's communication satellites began broadcasting, targeting data for weapons the HFY couldn't see. The Battle of Earth lasted 14 hours and became known as the day humanity announced its return to the galaxy. Maya led fighter squadrons that moved like dancers, their quantum drives allowing maneuvers that seemed to violate physics. Jin's cyber warfare teams turned the aliens' own systems against them, introducing viruses that made HFY computers report false information, while human weapons found their targets with impossible accuracy. But it was Lazarus that provided the real surprise. The AI didn't just coordinate human forces, it predicted HFY movements with an accuracy that suggested it understood their tactical doctrine better than they did themselves. How is this possible? Sarah asked, during a brief lull in the fighting. I have been learning, Lazarus replied. Every communication they sent, every tactical formation they used, every response pattern they employed during their occupation. They are advanced, but they are not adaptable. They follow protocols. Humans improvise. As if to prove the point, Maya's squadron executed a maneuver that involved using a HFY battleship's own gravitational field to slingshot their fighters into an impossible attack angle. The alien vessel, designed to withstand frontal assault, had no defense against weapons fire that came from directly below its hull. The tide turns by the end of the first week of fighting. It became clear that the war wasn't going as the HFY had expected. Human forces weren't just holding their ground, they were winning. Technologies that had seemed like science fiction a week earlier were proving devastatingly effective against alien forces that had grown comfortable with their technological superiority. Sarah received a communication request from the HFY High Command on the 8th day. The alien who appeared on her screen was tall, elegant, with features that seemed carved from living crystal. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that suggested multiple throat chambers. I am Vexstar, Supreme Commander of the 4th Fleet. Your species has proven more resourceful than our assessments indicated. Sarah nodded carefully. We tried to tell you that from the beginning. You chose not to listen. We offer terms, Vexstar continued. Cease your attacks, and we will negotiate a new arrangement, one that grants your species greater autonomy within our empire. Sarah glanced at the tactical displays around her. Human forces were winning, but the cost was mounting on both sides. Ships destroyed, lives lost, entire installations reduced to debris. The easy path would be to accept the offer, to return to a cage that was slightly larger and somewhat more comfortable. Counteroffer, she said finally. Recognize humanity as an independent species with full sovereignty over our territory. Establish formal diplomatic relations based on mutual respect. Help us understand what other threats exist in this galaxy that made you believe conquest was necessary. Vexstar's expression was unreadable, but something in its posture suggested surprise. You would offer cooperation after we attempted to subjugate you. We would offer partnership with equals, Sarah replied. We never wanted to be your enemies, Vexstar. We wanted to be your colleagues. The new arrangement, the Treaty of New Geneva, was signed 3 weeks later, establishing the framework for human independence and HFY recognition of human territorial sovereignty. But more importantly, it began a dialogue about threats that both species would need to face together. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the new diplomatic station, watching as human and HFY ships worked together to construct joint research facilities. The galaxy, it turned out, was far more dangerous than either species had understood alone. There were threats in the deep void that required cooperation between multiple civilizations to address. Webb joined her at the viewport, looking older, but more satisfied than she'd seen him since before the occupation. Hard to believe it worked out this way, did it? Sarah asked. Work out, I mean. We lost a lot of people on both sides. We proved something important, Webb replied, both to ourselves and to them. We proved that humans don't just survive. We evolve, we adapt. We find ways to turn our weaknesses into strengths and our defeats into victories. Maya appeared beside them, still wearing the flight suit that had become her unofficial uniform. The first joint patrol launches tomorrow. Human and HFY ships working together to investigate reports of something called the Devourers in the Outer Rim. Never thought I'd be flying alongside former enemies. Jin's voice came through the communication system, carrying an excitement that had been absent during the occupation years. The technology exchange programs are already showing results. Their gravitational manipulation techniques, combined with our adaptive AI systems, are producing possibilities neither species imagined alone. Sarah smiled, watching as a human construction. Crew worked alongside HFY engineers to install new defensive systems. Lazarus, status report on the integration protocols. Proceeding smoothly, the AI responded, its voice now carrying warmth that seemed entirely genuine. Both species are adapting well to cooperative frameworks. Long-term projections suggest significant mutual benefits from this arrangement. And the other threats? The ones the HFY were afraid of. Substantial but manageable with proper preparation and coordination. The galaxy is vast, Sarah, and not all of its inhabitants are interested in coexistence. But together, humans and HFY represent a formidable alliance. The message 6 months after the treaty signing. Sarah found herself back in the communications center. But this time, she was composing a message that would be broadcast to every known civilization in local galactic space. It was humanity's official announcement of their return to interstellar affairs. To all sentient species within range of this transmission. She began, her words being translated into dozens of languages by Lazarus's linguistic protocols. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Diplomatic Corps, speaking on behalf of the people of Earth and her colonies. She paused, thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From listening to the voices of scattered human colonies to speaking for humanity on the galactic stage seemed impossible. But then again, the past year had been full of impossibilities. We are the species you may know as humans. Some of you may have heard that we were conquered, subjugated, or destroyed. We were not. We were learning. We chose peace when peace was possible. We chose patience when patience was wisdom. We chose cooperation when cooperation offered hope. But we never chose extinction, and we never chose permanent surrender. The message continued, outlining humanity's commitment to peaceful coexistence, their technological capabilities, and their willingness to contribute to galactic stability. But the core of the message was simple. Humanity was back, and they were not the same species that had been forced into submission 3 years earlier. We have learned that survival is not enough. Growth is not enough. Even prosperity is not enough. What matters is the choice to remain who you are while becoming who you need to be. We chose peace once, and we learned from it. We chose war once, and we learned from it. Now we choose partnership, cooperation, and the exploration of possibilities that none of us can achieve alone. As she finished the broadcast, Sarah looked out at the stars and felt something she hadn't experienced since before the HFY arrival: excitement about the future. Humanity had faced extinction and chosen survival. They had faced subjugation and chosen resistance. They had faced war and chosen victory. Now they faced the infinite possibilities of a galaxy full of potential allies, threats, discoveries, and adventures. What happens next? Maya asked, joining Sarah at the viewport. Sarah smiled, watching, as the first joint human HFY exploration vessel prepared for launch toward the galaxy's edge. Next, we find out what we're really capable of when we're not fighting each other. Next, we discover what challenges exist that require the best of multiple species working together. Next, we prove that the choice between peace and strength was always a false choice. The exploration vessel engaged its drives and disappeared into hyperspace, carrying both human and HFY crew members toward unknown regions of space. It was the first of many such missions, each one expanding the boundaries of known space, while strengthening the alliance between former enemies. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't military or technological. It was the realization that being strong enough to fight didn't require abandoning the wisdom to choose peace. They had learned to be both, peaceful when possible, fierce when necessary, and always ready to adapt to whatever challenges the universe might offer. The message they sent to the galaxy was simple. We are humanity. We chose peace once. We chose war once. Now we choose what comes next, and we choose it together, *.